Hey guys, welcome to In the Garden. It's springtime, and here in the desert, that means wind, and a lot of it. It also means trying to protect your plants. In this video, I'm going to share with you 4 strategies to help you protect your plants during strong winds. Thanks for joining me. Whether you're a new viewer or a returning subscriber, I'm glad you're here. This is In the Garden, where I share tips and tools to help new gardeners be successful in backyard vegetable gardening. Today, we're talking about the wind. This is really important, especially here in the high desert, because it gets really windy and it can do a lot of damage to your plants if you're not prepared. Being prepared to deal with the winds can really increase your enjoyment while you're learning to garden. The first strategy I want to share with you is actually pre-planning before you've even got your garden started. You need to consider where you're going to plant your garden in your yard. You need to consider where you have your home, where you have fences or structures, sheds, other buildings that may help protect your garden when it gets windy. This can save you a lot of headache just having your garden in the right location. Having your garden somewhere where all the wind comes into your yard and it's always getting blown and where the gustiest parts are, it's really going to do a lot of damage and you're going to fight with it for years. The best way to determine where to put your garden in your yard is to go out on a really windy day and just walk around your yard and see where it's windy. Where is the wind blocked the most? Where does it get really gusty? Just look for the best place. Here in the high desert, the winds typically come out of the southwest. This is especially true during the spring. All of our strongest winds are going to come out of the southwest. So when you're considering where to place your garden in your yard, keep that in mind. Now, if you're watching this video, chances are you already have your garden in your yard and you're trying to deal with the wind now. The second tip I want to share with you is actually going to help you right now if it's windy. The second strategy is covering your plants. You can do this using a lot of things you already have around your house. You can use buckets or storage containers, even food containers if your plants are really small. That leftover plastic ice cream bucket that you put in your cabinet, for some reason, you can use that to cover one of your plants. All you're going to do is turn it over and put them on top of your plants. This method can really stop the wind from hitting your plant. It's really effective in protecting your garden when it gets windy. You're going to need a container for every plant that you need to cover though. If you use this method, there's a couple of things you want to keep in mind. One, you want to make sure that the containers are secure. You don't want them getting blown over by the wind, which can actually cause a lot more damage in your garden by having a container blowing around hitting everything. You can secure the containers by just putting something heavy on top of them, such as a rock or a brick or whatever you have laying around in your garden. You also want to be careful that you're not covering your plants during the daytime. You can use this method during the morning or in the evening time or overnight, but you don't want to cover your plants with a container when it's hot outside while the sun's shining on them. It can get really hot inside the container and you're actually going to cook your plant, and that's going to do even more damage than it trying to deal with the wind. The third strategy is using cages or staking to help protect your plants. You probably already have a lot of these tomato cages on your tomatoes in your garden, but you can use those on all sorts of plants, not just for tomatoes. And they do a really good job of protecting it from the wind because it'll allow the plant to move around some, but it will keep it from getting blown over all the way and snapping off the stem. It doesn't do anything to protect a lot of the leaves, but that's okay because you're really worried about protecting the stem so that you don't lose your plant. The leaves and stuff will get hardened off with the wind as it blows on them more and more, and your plant will get really sturdy, but you want to be careful that the stem doesn't get snapped off. The thing with cages is you're going to have to put them on while the plants are small. If your plants are already large, you won't be able to get them on without damaging the plant, so that won't work for larger plants that are already established in your garden. And some plants, like squash, won't really go into a cage very well, so that's not going to work for them. If your plants are already too large for a cage or you don't want to use that method, you can also use staking. Staking means just putting a piece of bamboo or a dowel or any kind of wood or plastic next to the stem of the plant and securing the plant to it. That can help to keep your plant from getting blown over in the wind. Just like cages, it's not really going to do anything for the leaves, but it'll keep the main stem from getting broken. Before I share the fourth strategy, I want to mention again that you need to make sure that your plants are hardened off before you move them into your garden. This can really help protect the plants during strong winds. If you don't know what hardening off is or you need to learn how to do it, make sure you go back and watch my video where I share how to harden off your plants. The fourth strategy I want to share with you is using shade cloth to protect your garden from the wind. This is what I use in my garden. In my yard, there's not really any areas that are not windy. It's always windy in my yard, and I try to plant a lot of stuff, so covering each plant individually with a bucket every time it gets windy and taking those off during the daytime, that's not really feasible. Also, I use cages for my tomatoes, and I'll even put them on my peppers sometimes, but for things like squash, that doesn't really help, and squash have those ginormous leaves, so ginormous is a word, look it up. Ginormous leaves, so that the wind really catches them and they can get damaged really easily. I use shade cloth and I just put it along the side of my garden rather than over the top. This allows some of the wind to come through. It keeps it from getting hot. It gets a lot of air, but it slows down the wind to a point where it's not going to damage my plants. There's a lot of different ways that you can put the shade cloth up in your garden. In my garden, I just used PVC pipe to build a frame and then secured the frame to the ground using rebar. Then I put the shade cloth up onto the PVC frame using bungee straps. This works really good because it has a lot of give and it's flexible, so when the wind really starts gusting around, it doesn't get damaged. It's not rigid, so stuff doesn't break. The shade cloth lets enough wind through so it doesn't tear. Like if you try to use a tarp or something like that, you're gonna have a lot of struggle with the wind catching that tarp and trying to blow your whole structure apart. Shade cloth is also really good because during the summertime, when it's not windy, you can utilize it to provide shade for your garden, which is what it's intended for. During the summertime, when it starts to get really hot here in the high desert, 100, 110, 112 degrees sometimes, and it's not windy, I can take that shade cloth off of the side of my frame and move it to the top. And when I secure it up there, it'll provide shade for my plants during the heat of the day. Those were the 4 strategies I wanted to share with you to protect your plants from the wind here in the high desert. Pre-planning where you're going to put your garden, placing containers over your garden to protect them from the wind, using cages or staking to protect the plants from getting snapped over, using shade cloth to protect your entire garden at once, but also making sure that you harden off your plants before you put them outside. If you got something from this video, make sure you hit that like button. And if you want to get more content like this to help you be successful in your backyard garden, make sure you subscribe so you can get all our latest videos. And hit the bell so you can turn on notifications. Thanks for watching. Have a good one.